I am Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, everybody, here we are. Welcome once again to. I don't know why I seem to want to kind of do that.
Well, you've got your bright songbird shirt on today.
Yeah, it is. Well, we've got
Very
some bad.
vibrant.
You're warbling over there.
I might need this later. There's some bad weather coming. So
Is it for safety?
for safety, yeah, on the way home. So.
Well, you are a mood dresser. I just thought it was because we were talking about neotropical birds today.
Yeah, I wanted to be bright for the birds. That's right.
I think we are. I mean, none of us are. Everyone's kind of bright today.
So welcome, West Point, Mississippi, everybody, the Gamekeeper Studio. We always have something interesting, we think, to talk about.
Yeah.
And today's no different. But this is a little unusual topic for us.
Birds. I mean, we talk about birds all the time.
We really do. We talk about the Merlin app. We talk about seeing something, and so it comes
we're
up a lot.
infatuated with ducks. We're infatuated with turkeys. You know.
Yeah, I mean, we like the hunting stuff.
Yeah,
and
the feathers
we
are
seem
great.
to know a whole lot about that, but the bird thing is new to a lot of us around here.
It is.
We're really interested in it.
Well, it probably all. I mean, it started for me in the spring woods. You know, obviously listening for turkeys, and then everything else you hear and you see them moving around. It's like, ooh, what's that? Ooh, what's that? What's he doing?
Well, you don't realize how many are out there making noise that you can't see until, like when I turn on that Merlin app.
Unbelievable.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So, look, let me go ahead and introduce. So we're excited to have Dr. Adam Rohnke, and he's on through Zoom. Let's hit the horns.
All right.
Now, Lanny, we've got a Yankee in our midst here. That's
But he went to Mississippi State, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah.
But he's from New York.
Yeah.
Rochester, New York. He went to Penn State. He got a degree in wildlife and sciences. But I'm not sure why we hit the horns there. But then he ends up down here at Mississippi State, and he gets a doctorate in forest resources. So,
Hey, that's an awesome forestry school over there.
He's been around the country too. Yeah. But Adam, we're excited to have you.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation. And I think I have another title, a word in front of Yankee, but this is a family show. We'll keep it that way. But, that's how I'm referred to here in the office. They used to just yell down the hallway for blank Yankee, and I knew it was my phone to pick up. So
hello.
Yeah, I've been here 18 years, staring at my 19th, starting August 1st. So I got here just in time for Katrina in 2005 as my first hurricane. So
wow,
I kind of almost like I'm from Texas. I go big or go home. But no, it's been a good ride. And my wife is also from New York, and she works for the Natural Science Museum here in Jackson. In the state agency, and we've made a good career and life of it here, and don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon. So
that's awesome.
Well, Laney, we spent some time near Rochester.
Yes, we did.
And if you remember, Charlie Alsheimer was from Bath, New York. I bet you know where that is.
Yeah, I've camped in Bath, New York. Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of big deer up
there. A
in
lot of whitetails, no doubt about it.
Have you got an area up there we could turkey hunt, Adam?
Yeah. Send a brother a pin. You got any onyx pins?
I may know some areas. I also know some folks that grew up with my wife who grew up in near Montezuma National Wildlife Refuge, right in the central part of New York and the Finger Lakes, and they've got some very, very big deer. But I really doubt he's going to allow anyone on his place. He's pretty protective of those.
Sounds
deer,
familiar.
But,
yeah, it does.
Yeah, exactly. I could send you some pictures, but they're impressive. But yeah, I'm sure we could find something up there for you guys.
Oh, that's nice.
New York is, once you get out of the city, it's really a beautiful state.
That's right.
No doubt.
Really is.
I will argue that the city is beautiful as well, just in a different way.
Yeah, well, and it's Dudley. You always take up the other side of everything. Adam, one of the things, my daughter lived there for a little while, and we went and visited her. I would see birds dead at the base of buildings. when you're walking
Yes.
around. I think those buildings are just. I mean, Lanny, you have birds flying to your windows. You were telling me about. I bet it happens in these major cities in a big way.
It would have to.
It does. Yeah, it can be a big issue year round, but particularly during migration. But yeah, it's a big issue. Glass has gotten very popular in design. I'm not going to act like I'm an engineer by any means of that stretch, but it doesn't take a genius to figure out. I was just in Washington, D.C. last week for a urban wildlife conference, and we were all commenting, since a lot of us are in that research realm, especially a lot of my colleagues at that conference, that everywhere we walked around where our hotel was, so about 3 blocks from the White House, everything was glass. Whether it was a window or just the design of the wall of the building, it was all glass and all very much lighted, which can be quite disorienting for migrating birds and just birds that are occupying the space, both in the daytime, but also particularly at night. It can disorient in a different way. So it's a big issue. Takes out roughly almost 1 billion birds, 500 million birds on average a year.
Wow.
Which is the estimate. So
It's a big number.
That's a lot of birds.
Yeah, it is. And then you add feral cats. I think they're a big consumer of wild birds too.
yeah, even more so. Yeah, about 2.4 billion, and that's like a decade old estimate. So it's quite a bit.
So like 3 billion birds are getting taken out by glass and cats.
And then you
Yeah,
got little boys with BB guns.
Yeah, you gotta,
And then you add in like vehicles and other things that they can run into, and it really starts adding up. So.
Well, look, I've got one question. I want to establish a little bit of your credibility right off the bat here. I want to ask you one question. Can you tell us why owls hunt in pairs?
Why owls hunt in pairs? Okay. Well, a lot of our
Well, hang on. No. They're in cahoots.
Oh yeah, here we
very
go.
nice. So okay,
I thought that was
well, you would get along really well with my students who are big on the dad jokes.
Yeah.
I
And I
saved
fall for it every time. So
yeah. Wasn't that like a South American?
Peruvian owls.
Peruvian owl.
Peruvian owls
They're
are hunting
in
pairs.
cahoots.
But anyway,
very nice. I like that. Yeah, my students will love listening to this with that starting off. That was good, very good.
Don't worry, he's got more.
Yeah. I'm on my toes now.
All right, so I'm looking at Lanny.
Yeah.
Lanny, we always get sidetracked. It doesn't seem like you get enough questions. I'm gonna start with you.
Well, I appreciate that. I live in a river bottom is the best way to put it, and I guess it's been for 2 years now. After spring turkey season, that's when I start paying attention to things other than turkeys. There are birds that started showing up, and a couple years ago, in particular, a bird that we've identified as a summer tanager, or red tanager, began showing up in the spring, and he would come to our windows and peck on the windows and flutter against them. And then there was females out there with him, and he's hanging out. Anyways, we got pretty familiar with the bird because he would, at daylight every morning, he was knocking on the window pretty much. Got pretty entertaining. Well, the winter came, and of course, he was gone. Well, lo and behold, this spring, he shows back up at the same time in the same place. So I guess what I'm asking is, can you help me understand those migration patterns? And is it possible that that's the same bird that's showing up at my house year after year?
Yeah, I'll have to give you the state government and biologist answer on confirming if that's the same one. The only way we'd be able to know that for sure is if it actually had a band on its leg, and you were either able to capture it or actually see the numbers on it, which I can tell you I've banded enough of passerines that they're too small to see with the naked eye. But there's also other ways of putting color bands on birds so we can visually identify that bird. So to answer that right up front, it could be, but we can't confirm it unless it's been tagged and identified that way. Now, all that to say, I have caught common yellow-throated warblers, which are very common here, and also in Pennsylvania when I was working on my master's. I not only caught the same bird, but I caught the same bird in the same mist net that was in the exact same location, a total of 9 meters in length.
Wow.
Basically on the same honeysuckle bush on the same property the following year. So there's a decent chance that it very well could be. And what we call that site fidelity, that the bird is just honed in on that spot. And it's pretty remarkable that birds that are neotropical migrants that can go very long distances to South America, Central America, let alone survive, and then fly all the way back the next year and literally be in almost the exact same spot within feet is, I think, pretty remarkable.
It is.
A lot of folks I give directions to that even with all of this and everything else, phones and everything else that we have, can't find their way out of a wet paper sack. So it's pretty amazing what these little things can do. But yeah, so it very well could be that. But yeah, migration it's an amazing feat. Anything from the thing of a ruby-throated hummingbird, which is literally, if you're looking at your thumb, average size is about the size of your thumb as far as the size of the body. In fact, your thumb probably weighs more than the actual bird. And the fact that they're able to go one shot over the Gulf of Mexico, let alone travel even farther and all the way north past where I grew up, is just, even as an ornithologist and trained ornithologist, is just amazing to think that something so small can make that feat, just physically make it, but let alone
go to the exact same spot. It's just
go to the same spot, but cognitively be able to work through the landscape and all the things that it runs into along the way is pretty remarkable.
So what aids them in their navigation? I mean, I believe, and I don't know. I'll have to catch him, put a band on him, I guess, to find out.
Yeah.
But I mean, we believe it's the same bird. And to your point, he is back in the exact same tree.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised. Again, I can't say that for 100% that it is the same bird without that, but I wouldn't be surprised with that. We see a lot of fidelity with that. But yeah, so how do they do it? How about let's start off with why they do it. That's always a question we try to get our students to answer, is why put all this effort into something? And I get this question a lot, is one, how do they do it? But then really think about what would possess a critter to put that much energy into something on an annual basis, let alone one, but the whole species and then groups of species to move forward. And the answer to that is pretty straightforward, in the sense that they're taking advantage of resources that aren't available where they are in their wintering grounds. So they are moving north to expand into larger nesting and more qualified nesting areas, and also more resources as far as food resources go. But with that, obviously comes a huge cost, right? You got to make it
there. Yeah.
You got to make it. And not only that, you got to make it back. Because if you don't make it back, you're not set up to take, minus 20 degrees in the Adirondack mountains, where I used to go at Boy Scout camp. You're not going to make it there either. So it's a huge trade-off to be able to do that. But again, the number one goal of all living things is to pass on that genetic code to the next generation. So they make that, quote unquote, make that calculation over all these eons to do that. So that's the main reason why they're doing it. And some people will be like, well, why do cardinals not do that? Well, not everyone takes the same path in life, right? Pun intended. So I can do dad jokes a little bit too, but so not really good ones, or catch you off guard, obviously. But so we have some resident birds. We have some birds that we call short migrators, kind of moderate and mid length migration, and then we have the long distance migrators, the warblers, things like the Arctic tern that literally go from one end of the globe to the other, for a month and a half, and then turn around and go back, all for nesting season, which is pretty remarkable. We have northern cardinals that literally won't leave your backyard. We have some woodpecker species out west and other species out west that literally just come down in elevation. If you've hunted out west a lot or spent time out west, it's pretty brutal in those higher elevations, but they come down in the fall to get into the valleys, and that's their migration. It may be all of 2 miles, but they've dropped down, 8,000 feet, where it's actually livable, for the winter months. Closer here to home, I get a lot of calls and questions on, where did all my robins go? Well, when I was back in New York, a lot of those robins came down here. Well, they don't necessarily go too far here. if you hunt enough in bottomland hardwood areas, you see a lot of grackles, robins during the wintertime.
Oh yeah.
But you don't see them in your front yard like you do in the spring, right? And then all of a sudden, early March shows up, or a warm February here in Mississippi, and all of a sudden the robins show back up in your yard. So they just shifted habitats. So there's a nature center in our town in Clinton, and literally you can see the robins in there in the winter, and then they will literally come out on the lawns right next to it in January. So again, don't know if it's the exact same birds, but they can literally just shift habitats to where it looks like they've gone, but that is considered a migration in the sense they've shifted habitat for a little bit, and then they come back. So there's all different types of migration with that. So it's a really a neat approach on how all the different critters figure out how to do this. But how they do it is amazing in itself. It really starts with the physical being. I mean, a bird is just incredibly efficient. Everything about a bird. You guys have enough birds up on the wall there. You've cleaned birds. You've spent time with game birds. They're extremely tough, and they're extremely efficient. So how do birds fly, right? They're light. They're light and they're efficient. So they have hollow bones, but they have strong bones. So that's number one. The other thing is they breathe a lot more efficiently than you and I. So we have about a 2% efficiency rate. Most birds are 90%, close to 100% efficiency, meaning all the oxygen they take in one breath, they're pretty much getting everything they can out of it. We are horrible. Even the really, really, like the Lance Armstrongs, with or without.
With or without enhancing?
Yeah, without enhancing, you may be in the 4 or 5%. Most of us, especially me, since I'm kind of scared of running, it's probably around 2%. I'll walk anyone to death, but running, you're going to get me. So their system, the respiratory system, is just so efficient. So that's how you get a hummingbird the size of your thumb can make a 600-mile one shot across the Gulf of Mexico, fighting the weather and the waves and wind and things like that, because they are so efficient with breathing. They're also very efficient in storing energy on their bodies. They can basically store it all over their bodies in different ways. So they have a great gas tank also with it. But how do they actually mentally figure it out? There's a research on it, but there's also some theories on it. One is they use the Earth's magnetic field. There are also some evidence and research showing that they use stars and other celestial imagery that they can use to navigate that way. And then the one that's probably the most concrete in the sense that makes sense to us is they use landforms. So that's why if you Google on your phone migratory bird paths, look at where a lot of those paths are. And we've actually been able to confirm a lot of those paths with fine detail now that we have GPS equipment on birds that are small enough they can go on these birds. And it's confirmed roughly, and in some cases very accurately, these paths. So we're on the Mississippi Flyway, right? Well, it's called the Mississippi Flyway, not for our state, right? It's the Mississippi Flyway because of the river. The huge river. And when you fly in a plane, you can see it. So the birds actually can use waterways, mountain ranges, coastlines, things like that to aid their navigation also. So it's a combination of all those things that allow them to be able to actually navigate. And then it's their engine and the structure, or their tires, if you want to say, the frame of their car that allows all that to happen and you get them there successfully. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Not a lot of them don't make it. A lot of them don't make it. So.
Wow. So typically, if a bird left Biloxi, Mississippi, hummingbird, to fly across to the Yucatan, how long would that take?
A lot of cases, they'll do that in a night or 2 days max, and it'll be straight flight because there's unless you hit the barrier islands, you're taking a dip and you ain't coming out of it. Yeah, a lot of birds. You've probably heard the word stopover habitat. Is a really important type of habitat, especially for birds. So say you're coming this was tying back to my start of my story there with Katrina. Well, there was a lot of concern after Katrina that with all the damage to the coast, that when the ruby-throated hummingbirds were going to be coming back in the spring, they were going to be coming back to nothing, right? And when they come and they finally land on the barrier islands or on in Biloxi, Ocean Springs, that area, everything was denuded, right? There was no vegetation left. So there was a huge campaign to put out as many hummingbird feeders as we could, even though with all the destruction, the human destruction, in addition to that, because when those birds, I mean, they're really gambling. I mean, they're shooting across 600 miles and they are coming in on fumes, maybe less than fumes. They ain't got much time to regroup, or then they're not going to make it through the next couple of days. So how they're able to do it is they literally fill that tank, and then, like, you used to shake your truck a little bit to burp it to get a little bit more in there. They fill that thing up and shoot for it. But they're also taking other things into consideration. They're not going to come from the south and head north, and when you got a northern cold front coming. The ones that do don't make it, so they don't get to breed again. Okay, they made a bad choice, and bad things happen. They go plunk. Okay, so a little protein snack for something in the Gulf of Mexico. So they're also able to sense barometric pressure and pick up weather patterns, and that's why you'll get these huge pushes of southerly migration when we get a cold front that comes through Mississippi, and they'll push across and use that backwind to push them, help them, assist them across the Gulf of Mexico. The same thing in the springtime, either a southerly wind or at least not a strong headwind of a northern front coming down. They'll know to shoot the gap and get up there, so they're not going into a headwind the whole way, because they won't make it if they hit a headwind. So it's just amazing how they can do it.
That is.
It really is.
It really is.
Dudley, what you got?
Well, you were just talking about hummingbird feeders, and we were semi-arguing earlier about, being that we're wildlife managers. Can feeders, like backyard feeders, can they help a population of birds, or is it more of a hindrance? We like to look at birds in our yard and attract them, but are there other things we can do? Is feeding birds bad, or is it okay? That's kind of a broad question, but
yeah, I know, and this is something that always comes up, because I get a lot of folks, as biologists, will sometimes talk out of both sides of our mouth, like, feeding wildlife in general is not good. We don't want to create a petting zoo in most cases with this for disease issues, human wildlife conflict issues. But then on the other side of the mouth, we have publications, including ones that I've been involved with and helped write and put together and give presentations on bird feeders. Well, how is that different, than this? So to answer your question directly, yes, bird feeding is helpful to wild birds. As with anything, again, being a state employee, it depends on how that's applied. We have recommendations on specific feeder types and specific feed that we would recommend that would be most beneficial at certain times of the year for different species. But it also comes with some responsibility. And I know this is probably going to tie into another hot button topic, outdoor cats, here in a moment. Sure. So what I try to do when I talk to garden groups or anyone on the phone or folks like yourself that ask me this question is, bird feeding is great as long as you're responsible with it. And there's multiple layers to this, and I'll keep it brief. First is, if you're backyard bird feeding because you're looking to set up a petting zoo, then I strongly suggest you not do it. So we're talking about putting bird feeders out. We're not talking about hand feeding birds in the sense of teaching blue jays or other things to come down and take it from your hand. That never ends well for the animal. I know you've had some of my colleagues on about other predators and black bears and things like that. It never ends well for the animal, even the smaller birds. Okay. So you got that. The other thing is, you don't want to set them up for an ecological trap. And that's a fancy word, and I got to use it every once in a while to earn my keep here. But ecological trap in the sense of a couple different ways. One is, I highly encourage people that have a lot of outdoor cats or have a lot of outdoor cats around them to either be smart with their placement of feeders or not to feed at all, because it can pull them into a trap to where birds or even, cats or even domestic dogs can get a hold of a bird, especially a dog that's really birdy can have a lot of fun with that. And just the fact, even if they don't get the actual animal, the stress of being chased all the time can be a real problem. So that's two big examples of ecological trap. But the other thing is too is to make sure we're not setting up these feeders to where they can encourage window strikes that we just talked about at the beginning, and also make sure that you're cleaning the feeders and have healthy, clean feed out there, because there's disease transmission potential and there's also rotten seed issues that can cause issues with birds. But particularly because bird feeders will get a lot of use in the winter months, it's really important that people keep a cleaning schedule based on how much use it's getting and keep fresh seed in there, because it can really harm them than it does help them, if that makes sense.
Okay, well, thanks. And I've got another, and again, this is somewhat broad, but what are some things, if we're into looking at birds and we're amateur bird nerds, what are some things we can do in our backyard aside from putting out a feeder? And you know, I know there's a lot of different species, but what are some of the basics we can do to keep and hold birds?
Yeah, so other things you can do in your backyard, and actually I've tried to employ more in my backyard just with having two young kids, travel a lot for work, is to encourage as many native plants as possible. So either naturally popping up in your yard, or actually purchasing native plants, or close horticultural varieties of that. So plants like American beautyberry and even some of the holly bushes, things that provide multiple aspects of the key things of habitat. So you need food, water, shelter, and space, right? Those key things. So if you can get a plant that provides both food and shelter, aka foliage or branches to nest in, or just have cover from the elements, any plant that can provide two of those would be excellent to try and include in that. So if folks in Mississippi or outside of Mississippi, go to your local extension service, or you can go to Mississippi State University Extension Service and just type in backyard habitat, and we have a publication with all the lists for Mississippi specifically, but also a lot of those plants would apply in the Southeast in general, that you could put in your backyard, both for hummingbird, very, very specific for hummingbirds, but also other birds too. So that's a huge one, is just putting native plants in. It's a lot less maintenance over time. You don't have to worry about, oh, we're going to be gone for 2 weeks. We need someone to come put feed in the feeders or clean the feeders. So native plants is a really good way to go. The other thing that's real simple is having a water supply. Just having a bird bath, straight up bird bath. Mm-hmm. I mean, I use the plastic thing that goes under the pots, that you can get from any of your box stores.
Yeah.
I don't spend $150 on a big fancy one. I buy several of those pans basically. You can spray paint them if you want, and let them dry, and then fill them with water and place them all throughout your backyard in that way. As long as you put them higher than your chocolate lab can drain them for you, like mine, it works out great. So really, water and native plants is really, really helpful.
Okay.
I like the idea of fixing up your backyard with the native plants, and then and different birds prefer different seeds.
Yeah,
and
yes.
My wife really enjoys feeding the birds, and we've had feeders going for a long time, platform and hanging, and it seems like our birds have gotten to the point where they won't hardly eat anything but a sunflower. They are just really, really picky. But our country birds out there at my little farm, they'll eat whatever I put out there.
Yeah, that's you hit the nail on the head. And there's a specific type of sunflower. It's not the striped sunflower. There's
it's a little black oil sunflower.
Yeah, black oil sunflower seed. This is what I recommend. You can buy it straight up, just in the bag. It's the perfect, in the sense that it's the perfect size, and the shell can be opened by almost all species that are going to use feeders. So from your little chickadees all the way up to your bigger birds, and the crude fat, carbohydrates, and everything the bird need it couldn't be more perfect in that little seed. The other key thing is you have less to clean up. You may have the hulls, but you're not going to have all the millets and everything else that are in those mixes. Which again, if you have a lab like mine that likes to eat those, you get colorful poo for a couple days after that. So, I'm assuming he keeps it down, But so I strongly recommend just buying the large 50-pound sacks of the black oil sunflower seeds. It's a little bit more expensive, but you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck because, as you witnessed, they literally will kick the other stuff out of the way to get to those. So you're literally throwing money on the ground, which can, have rodent problems and stuff you got to clean up with. So just focus on the prime rib or the ice cream, as they say.
We, Lanny, my wife kind of keeps a list of all the birds she sees. And it's a pretty extensive list. I don't know it, but this particular spring she's had some, if I'm pronouncing it right, grosbeaks.
Yes. Yep. The rose-breasted grosbeaks. Yes. Yep.
And that got her real excited. So are they common?
Oh man, I get real excited about those when they hit my feeders. I had a couple this year. They seem to come in eruptions for some folks. I have some colleagues here in and around Jackson, and they had them for 2 or 3 weeks just hanging out at their feeders. They're a beautiful bird. If you Google rose-breasted grosbeak, there's a couple different species, but the rose-breasted one is the one that's best known, especially in the eastern part of the United States. Beautiful bird. Got a white kind of ivory bill, black checkered through white, and it's got this big rose red chevron going across its chest. I mean, it sticks out, and it's a good sized bird. And the females will look similar, but they're brown, but all the same patterning, and they don't have the rose breasted chevron. But I also have a nice story with them. When I was misnetting birds in Pennsylvania, I had a rule with my techs to let me know what was in the bag, so I didn't get chomped on too bad. Well, they thought it'd be funny. We had a school group out there one day, and my one tech, who always thought it was fun to poke at his boss, handed me a bag and didn't tell me, watch out, and I put my hand in the bag, and there was a grosbeak in there. And that joker latched on right between the webbing between my fingers, and immediately the bag started filling up with, the cotton bag started sucking up the blood that was coming out of the bite. And I'm standing in front of a bunch of, 7 and 8-year-olds trying not to be a Yankee and drop some Yankee words and try to slowly get the bird off my hand without freaking him out or killing the bird. But he had a lot of extra unwanted duties after that.
I bet he did.
So I have a special place in my heart for rose-breasted grosbeaks. But they're actually their beak is strong enough to where they can actually crack black cherry tree pits.
Wow.
Of cherries. So they're incredible in their strength.
Yeah,
Wow.
I've tried to crack a few of those, and it is tough.
So
Yeah.
So you've been here long enough. I bet you've encountered this. You've seen these birds, but 15 or 20 years ago, we started seeing these Eurasian collared doves started popping up, and we've first heard all kind of rumors that they'll push mourning doves out of their nest. I don't know if that's true or not, but can you tell us a little bit about these birds and some of these rumors that we hear about them?
Yeah, I can't pull it off the top of my head as far as if they do that, but a lot of times, either invasive or non-native species will displace other native species. But I can attest to that. When I moved here, I'm right on Hines Community College campus, and we're actually on their agricultural complex, which is a big hotspot for mourning doves and Eurasian collared doves. And I can remember when the first time I saw it popping up here, and now that's all I see out here in the parking lot. In fact, there's probably defecating on my truck as we speak, as they commonly do. But there's probably, when I just walked in a little while ago, there was probably half a dozen in the parking lot on the lines and everything. So they've gotten very common throughout the state to where 18 years ago they were present, but not as common for sure.
Yeah, Lanny, I think if you look forward 15 or 20 years, they're going to be really a big problem.
The Eurasian dove.
The Eurasian collared dove.
Well, as long as they taste good, we'll be good to go.
Yeah. Yeah, there's
that's the answer to all invasive species.
That's right. It tastes good. It's on. I believe they do. So we'll take care of them.
Yeah, we had some. I was out walking around on our local refuge last summer and noticed some of those whistling ducks that
Oh
we
yeah,
don't.
there's some out at my
yeah.
house.
And I've been reading about them lately that they come further north than they used to.
Yes, yeah, the black-bellied whistling ducks. Yeah,
Correct.
they've become more present in the Delta. You used to get lucky to see them every once in a while in the borrow pits here and there. But yeah, I've heard more and more of expanding into the state and people being hunters being successful in harvesting some here and there too. So,
Oh wow.
So as a guy, I'm sure when you were coming along and getting going through college, learning about birds, you had to understand their songs and be able to recognize their songs, and I think that's a badge of honor with you guys to be able to hear a bird and look up and know what that song is. What do you think about the Merlin ID app?
yeah, it's pretty incredible actually. Yes, it is a badge of honor to be able to do that. It's challenging. I will say I'm actually doing breeding bird surveys as we speak. I'll be doing one tomorrow morning along the Natchez Trace, and then next week I'll be down in Florida with the Park Service, helping them with their breeding bird surveys. It's definitely a challenge. I think Merlin is great. It's a very intuitive app that really, I think, has democratized even more so bird watching. We used to give one of these books that are like behind me, and it's basically the Bible of bird watching, and hand it to you, and it's in all these scientific family orders. And unless you're trained up on it or really dive into it, it can be really, really intimidating. Whereas Merlin is set up just so much more intuitively in the sense of looking at the size of the bird, the general shape of the bird, and the kind of the basic categories that most birds or what most people know. And then it takes where your location is, and it brings it down. So it just speeds up the learning process so much. And I think any of my colleagues would be lying to say that, because sometimes even folks that are trained like myself, you can get a tough one out in the field. And it can be very helpful in confirming a species too. So I think it's a great technology, and not saying this just because I come from New York, but the Cornell Lab of Ornithology puts out some fantastic technology. In fact, you were talking about migration earlier. There's another project they're involved with called Birdcast. So you can actually go on there and put in Mississippi, and it will show you all the migratory birds and when they've come through. But you can watch it real time, and you can actually put the like a weather app. You can put it in motion, and you can watch those birds migrate over time between all the different data that's feeding that. It's pretty remarkable to play the time lapse and see those birds migrate through and then come back down through. It's really neat. I use it in presentations all the time.
That's really interesting, and
Looking at it right now.
Lanny's trying to pull it up right now.
Oh
But,
yeah.
So have you? I know you have. The sometimes that there's the radar on the news will and it'll show these bird migrate. Mm-hmm. I'm struggling for words here, but it looks like it's just a flare up of but it ends up being birds. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I don't know a ton on it because you got to be really smart to understand it. But actually, we have one of the leaders. He's now retired, but Frank Moore with USM in Hattiesburg. He was really, really involved with that when it really started to come in development in the last 20, 25 years. He's retired, but I think he's professor emeritus with University of Southern Mississippi and still active. But yeah, it's basically there's just so much bird mass at the right space to where that technology is working, that technology can actually be pick the movements up, and we can actually see bird eruptions, migration eruptions coming through and coming out. And for the longest time, it was confusing meteorologists, like, what is going on here? But why all of a sudden we've got like pop-up thunderstorms in the middle of the night, kind of a thing. So yeah. It's a really neat technology that they can use in combination now with another Cornell program, eBird, which I'm sure you've discussed, which feeds Merlin with personal observations people put in their phone, in combination with this other technology that we really can fine tune how these species are moving through the landscape without actually putting our hands on them, which is huge when it comes. Although it takes some of the sexiness out of being a biologist, but we would never have enough of us to actually trap enough birds to be able to put equipment on them. So this technology is really incredible in what it can do.
Right now, it's saying there's over 20 million birds in flight right now. That's pretty crazy.
And it's birdcast.com?
Yeah, Birdcast.
Wow.
Yep, Birdcast. I think birdcast.info. I think
that's what I meant, .info.
That's fascinating.
And it's fed by Cornell, I think Colorado State, and a couple other institutions that feed larger data sets into it. It's pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, it is.
There's nothing else like it. It's really remarkable what they can do.
Yeah, it's beautiful. There you go. That was one. Yeah. So, have you ever seen a whippoorwill in the daytime?
A whippoorwill? Yes. I have, but I've only seen one, and when I was actually out in the field doing some research.
They are the most camouflaged bird of all.
They're camo, that's for sure.
And is it true that they sit sideways on the limb?
Yeah, they tuck down pretty tight on the limb.
So instead of sitting, like that, they sit like that.
Oh, they sit with the limb.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I've never seen one in the daytime. You think about all the times we've been in the woods. You think you would see one. We saw some flying.
Yeah, we see them flying
right
at dawn. Yeah,
yeah.
at daybreak we see them.
I've walked up on them and, Chuck Will's widows at night with my headlamp on. And you can get really close to them before they spook. They just sit there.
So what I wanted to another question I got a bunch. And Mac, I'm fixing to come to you for a question, so get ready. So, but help me understand this, because this really amazed me, and I'm easily amazed by nature, and I may have gotten this wrong. But I heard that the black-capped chickadee, who is one of the last birds to migrate, even if he migrates, but that he has the ability to, in the wintertime, it's like his brain enlarges, and he can remember hundreds of places that he's hidden nuts or seeds so that he can survive. But then in the summertime, he doesn't need access to all that, and it's like his brain...
He just forgets about it.
But when he needs it, he's
Forget
got
about
it. Can you... Am I getting that right? Or maybe I've oversimplified it, or...
No, I can't speak to that specifically. I just not pulling up on that specific example in the recall, but birds do have, particularly ones that do stay, resident birds like black-capped chickadees, especially other northern species that really, if you want to put a human component on it, have to focus to survive through the winter. They have a lot of strategies and capabilities. Not only the memorization, if you want to call it, to where their food caches are, but also just their other physiological attributes of controlling exposure to the cold. So one that I think of is their like shorebirds in the winter are able, and in the summer in some cases, a lot of people will see shorebirds standing up on one leg and think they're resting or hanging out. Well, in a lot of cases, they're actually thermal regulating themselves with that. So if it's really cold out, they're keeping one foot down in the water because they got to stand, right? And they keep the other one up here so they don't expose that exposed limb. But they're also able to shunt down the blood flow into that leg, and basically the one that they're standing on, just keep enough blood flow in there to keep it alive. So because if it's just like if you're running coolant through, right? If you run that blood through and you're running all of it through, all that heat's getting sucked out of it every time it goes through the system in that cold water. So they're able to shunt it down just enough so where it's not getting frostbite, and then they'll switch and bring that other one up and bring it back to life and control their temperature loss in that way. Other things they do is like, again, shorebirds in the cold, you'll see them, they'll be in those groups and they'll position into the wind. And the guy up front will take the run of the wind coming across the beach, and then the other ones they'll migrate to the back, pun intended there, and right into the middle of the group to try and, stay together to keep warm that way. And they'll share that responsibility to try and stay alive in those really cold, exposed areas. So I know it's not your chickadee example. I can't pull that one out of my recall. Guess I'm getting older, but it's really amazing what they can do on both extremes, both on the cold side and on the extreme heat side, and how they can thermal regulate to try and stay alive.
Wow, they're
Interesting
amazing.
stuff.
Mac, I know you got a question.
I do. So when I think about just local native birds like the mockingbird or the killdeer, they each, the mockingbird mimics and the killdeer does the broken wing thing.
Mm-hmm.
What are some other interesting traits or mechanisms that birds that are in Mississippi or the Southeast, that common occurrences like that are just specific to the bird?
That's a really good question. So some other, I guess, kind of.
Just odd.
Yeah. No, that's man. I tell you what. I mean, that's, and I'm not saying this in an insulting way, but this is usually what would come from like an 8-year-old and stunk in front of
I've got a
500.
4-year-old, so I'm used to those questions.
So the mockingbird, we see them out on the grass, and they just
Yes,
kind of do their wings up.
Yeah.
What are they doing when they do that?
So a lot of times they're providing, they're creating shade and trying to when they're hawking for insects, basically, when they're trying to do some of that. And that was actually an example I was going to use with some of our heron species. You may see them like little blues or the great blue herons. And getting back to photographers, a lot of times we'll get that photo where they're on the edge of and I'm doing this for folks that aren't watching at home. I'm mimicking it out on screen here, but they'll cup those wings around and actually cover their head like this and create shade, almost like they're a post or a limb, so they can actually see into the water better, but also encourage their prey to come up underneath them. And then they'll dart down like that. So that's a kind of cool thing. Some of I haven't seen it a lot here, but I was just talking about this I can't remember where I was, but crows are really interesting too. They're super smart. Often don't get a lot of credit for how smart.
Wicked smart. They're really smart.
All the crow species are. And in some cases where they will, pick up nuts, things like that, and they will actually test out how high they need to go up to drop it on pavement to crack things open, or if they're looking at, mollusks, things like that. So they can actually, you can see them testing it out to see how far they need to go up to drop the thing so it will crack, so they don't have to waste energy trying to break the thing open. So that's another neat one. The killdeer one is great. That's kind of ubiquitous throughout its range. The broken wing attribute. I actually just saw one as we were talking out the window here, looking at the parking lot out of my office. Very common. You get that. I'm also a baseball coach for my kids, so we often have to shoo them off the field, when the kids are running around too. But I think the heron one would be another one. It's not necessarily just specific to Mississippi, but it's really neat to see them just. It's like they're almost going into superhero mode. It kind of reminds me of some of the Batman scenes on how they do that.
Isn't there a bird that uses like a little piece of a stick to get insects out of to put, what? And then there's one that will put insects it kills like on a thorn or a piece of barbed wire.
Yes. That's a good one. Yeah, that's our loggerhead shrike.
Okay.
We'll do that. And actually, I have a great photo I should send to you folks. So I work on a lot of urban wildlife projects now. And we were actually at one of our parks here in Jackson. And it was probably about February, real wet time of month. And I was with my graduate student. We were turning out to checking cameras in our parks. And I stopped and she's like, "Are you all right?" And I'm just looking off like, "Oh man, this is great." And I know she thought I was nuts, but getting to your point, it wasn't a stick, but it was the fencing around a baseball field, where they twist it and it's got the sharp ends protruding up so you don't climb over it, or try to at least reduce you to climb over. And there was crawfish heads and bodies the whole length of that fence. And I said, "Do you see that?" And she really thought I'd lost my mind. I got out and pointed out, I said, "There is a loggerhead shrike in this area," because it's a lot of people will call them butcher birds, but literally had all its prey staked out on that fence, and it was crawfish because there was a low spot right there that it was picking off. So, that's a great example. Northern shrikes will do that also up in the northern part of the country.
Wow,
fascinating.
That really is. There's nothing cuter than than a 3 or 4 little killdeers. Run around. We have them out here in the parking lot. And Mac, one time, y'all always wonder why I have Copper on a leash. Well, a year or two into it, he doesn't really need a leash to walk to my truck, but a killdeer ran out in front of him and started toward the road out in front of us. And of course, she was dropping that wing, and he was hot after her. And ever since then, I've put him on a leash when I walk out there. So
yeah, it did its job, distracted him from the nest.
So what is there like a family of birds that's your favorite that you enjoy studying? I know a lot of bird watchers have certain families or whatever that they follow. I've got a buddy that's a warbler nerd.
Yeah. Most experienced birders really nerd out about the warblers. They're kind of the cream of the crop. Often the ones that a lot of people are missing to fill out their bird list. You mentioned your wife keeps a list of all the ones in her backyard. A lot of people have backyard lists or trip lists. A lot of serious birders, including myself, will have a life list. I just had a buddy of mine that just went over, I think, 650 species of bird that he's seen, in North America. So people get real serious about them. Some people have a world list. Those people also tend to have a Learjet available to them. But people get real serious about this stuff. And I used to be real serious, but having kids and young kids in my 40s kind of moderated a lot of my activities.
That'll do it.
So, yeah. But I still enjoy it. But probably, maybe not a family, but my favorite bird is the Blackburnian warbler, which is up north. But if you Google Blackburnian warbler and look at the male in spring and summer, I think you'll see why he's one of my favorites. It really looks like the sun is either rising or setting on its
he's a good looking bird.
In front. Yeah, it's not one you hear a lot of, especially in the South, because they push through here pretty quick. But it's always been my favorite. I remember the first one I saw in the Adirondacks back in New York. Just a beautiful bird. So good eye candy. But as far as like waterfowl, one that I've always wanted and I missed twice when I was out with my friend in California was a cinnamon teal, which is another one of my favorites.
They're beautiful.
They are.
When I was younger, somebody in my duck camp on the Mississippi Flyway looked up and got a cinnamon teal, and I've never seen one. That was the first time I'd ever seen one, and haven't since.
Yeah.
But
I can still hear my buddy saying, "Rohnke, here's a cinnamon," and instantly going from being elated to crying after I missed on the first shot, and the second shot, not even a chance. If you've hunted teal at all, they can embarrass you as bad as a dove can embarrass you. So but yeah, beautiful birds. But those are probably my top two favorites, I would say.
Wow. Well, I tell you what, this has been interesting. There's a couple other things I wanted to make sure we just touched on. And these guys, Lanny, I want to make sure everybody get a chance to ask all their questions. But I wanted to ask you, how is the avian flu? Seems like this year we're hearing like it was worse than it typically has been. And just wanted to get does it impact these little birds that we're talking about?
It can affect different groups more than others. We hear a lot of avian flu, particularly in our waterfowl. Obviously, it was a big issue this year, obviously in our commercial industries that you heard with that. I have not seen what the projection is going to be for over this winter with it, but typically the monitoring will start taking place, and hunters aid in that by offering, being requested or offering their quarry to be swabbed at the check stations. I have several friends out west in California and Alaska, and they're a lot more involved with it because typically there are a lot of monitoring stations up in Alaska because it will typically come over, and migrating waterfowl often will be one of the sources to bring it over to this continent or the new strain. But as of right now, I don't know the current status of where we are. But yes, last year was a pretty tough year.
But does it affect the little birds, the tufted titmouses and those kind of birds?
Yeah, it does to a point, but not to the level like we see it in waterfowl. And some of the other diseases we see in waterfowl, and some of that is just their congregation habitats, and then also just being in concentrated areas in water impoundments and things like that. It's just not all the vectors are necessarily there, but that's another reason. Some other diseases too that are associated with like house finches, things like that. Another good reason, if you're providing feeders, to routinely wash those feeders, if not weekly, every 2 weeks, or based on how much usage they're getting. If you start to see feces and other things piling up on your purchase of your feeders, what we can do as far as residential homeowners that are bird feeding is clean those feeders. And in some cases, it's best to just take the feeders down for a while, and let it rest and let nature take its course, and let things break down in the environment. Or the other option, if you have a big enough yard in another spot, is to move the feeder to another spot so you don't have years and years of feces and spoiled seed in the same spot. Kind of let it rest and move around that way. So that's something that someone can do in their own backyard.
Yeah, that's great advice. And then would you take just a minute and because I think we may have we've got a few listeners, not many, but not everybody knows about the ivory-billed woodpecker and that story. And then if you could just touch base a little bit on that, and then can you share what you've heard? It seems like recently somebody has been saying that they've spotted some.
Yeah. So everyone probably remembers it. It was in the first couple of years that I moved here. I believe it was 2006. There was a spotting by some qualified folks. Caused a huge interest. They designed a whole festival around the ivory-billed woodpecker in towns, and I believe it was Searcy, Arkansas, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. I actually went to one of the initial meetings there. Cornell Lab of Ornithology was heavily involved with that, with some other institutions, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, obviously. So the ivory-billed woodpecker is believed, at the very least, endangered, if not extinct, here, with populations also in Cuba and here. A lot of different reasons for that extinction, and a lot of it's this habitat loss and destruction over time. But yeah, so there was about 3 or 4 years where everyone was pretty hot and bothered, as they say, about potentially finding or confirming an existing pair in the Arkansas swamps, I believe along the White River, if my memory serves me correctly. Yeah. And it got to a point where they just couldn't confirm it beyond of the initial reported sightings and possible recordings that they had. So this recently came out. This is actually this research site. The paper just published back in April, and if people are interested in looking at it, it's not really hard to consume, as far as, it's not just chock full of models and p-values. It's more simple for folks like myself also. It's actually called "The Multiple Lines of Evidence Suggests the Persistence of Ivory-billed Woodpecker." And it's in Ecology and Evolution. If you just Google ivory-billed woodpecker, the articles come up with them. Several of them actually provide live links, open links, that you can access the article and you can actually see the imagery that they're referring to. So I talked to a couple of my colleagues about this recently, and I think the feeling is very, very cautiously optimistic, but kind of still feeling, and maybe that's still some of the hangover from the last time we went through this, that there's a methodology to this. Over 10 years of information went into the study using cameras, drones, and a product called Audio Moss, which is a small noise recording device. And they provide some decent evidence for it, and also some personal from trained scientist sightings and drawings in the same area. Unfortunately, there's not a feather, or there's not a very, very clear image. If you look at that article, there's several that they're trying to tie to older imagery to try and show a relationship with it. So I think there's some cautious optimism there. But there was a lot of, I hate to say, negative fallout with the last one. That town really invested a lot of, Brinkley, Arkansas was the name of the town. They invested a lot into it, and they're very passionate about their efforts with that. So I think it's still leaves a lot to be desired, but their approach was definitely pretty solid. I just don't know if they don't have the silver bullet, I guess is what I'm trying to say with that. I think it's still out to be decided.
Okay.
But it's also been done by the National Aviary Group out of Pittsburgh. So, that's a solid group of folks.
Well, it'd be exciting if they find some.
Oh yeah,
For sure. Are they bigger than a pileated woodpecker?
Yeah, they're generally of that size, a little bigger. They have hence the name, the ivory bill, but they're very similar in that, and that's often what when you get the reports of, and you can see it in this, they actually include in the article, the appendix, the actual interviews of the people that describe what they saw. And a lot of cases they're asking them questions: how is it different? How is the feather pattern different from the pileated woodpecker, the sound, blah, 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 blah. So there's a lot of comparisons to it. So it's very similar size, which it's a large bird. I mean, ivory-billed woodpecker is no joke. Pileated woodpecker is no joke. It's a large bird. If you've ever seen one of those jokers close up on the ground working a stump or working a down log, or even, you walk into the woods and you might as well have a neon sign on. I mean, you see a recent activity. I mean, they have hollowed out a huge tree. They can really move some wood quickly. So yeah, they're very similar in size and in relation to that. But that's often what some of the counter arguments will be. Well, maybe it was just a pileated woodpecker with a different. What they're looking for a lot is a white pattern on the lower parts of the wings when the wings are closed and they're feeding on the tree, and that's where it can get iffy if you don't have a real grainy shot or a long distance view of it. So.
All right, Lenny, what you got? Anything else?
I'm looking at videos of the ivory-billed woodpecker.
It's I think I've heard that they call it the Lord God woodpecker.
Yeah, Lord God bird or the Grail bird.
Yeah.
The pileated.
No,
There it is.
the ivory billed.
Maybe one will show up.
When people see it, it's so impressive. They're like, Lord God.
Oh, I thought that was a pileated. Maybe it's both. They're very similar looking.
Well, let's ask him. Which one am I thinking about? Is that the ivory billed or the?
No, you're right. You're the ivory billed. Yeah, it's called the Lord God bird. Also, the Holy Grail, I believe, the Holy Grail bird, something along those lines too. So yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It has, I like I said, I was involved, not necessarily involved, but I attended a lot of those meetings when I first moved here. I was kind of doing a different type of programming, and there was a lot of interest. Is the potential of what if they actually had found that bird? Not saying they didn't in Arkansas, and what it could bring to such a rural town outside of the hunting season, that it could really boost up that town. So I was working a little bit more in helping private landowners develop fee-based enterprises tied to hunting. So that's why I was at those meetings initially. So.
Well, I tell you what, you'd think some of those big swamps in Louisiana, there could be one hidden down there.
That's what I'm reading here. It says there's a new study coming. You might have just mentioned this latest study published May 18th of 2023.
Yes. That's the one. Yeah. It's in Ecology and Evolution is the journal.
Yeah. It said they had a sighting in Louisiana.
Yeah.
Well, let's hope.
Yeah, maybe.
So, Dr. Adam Rohnke, this has been a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
And I may not have said early on that you spend the majority of your time managing urban wildlife. That's kind of what you do. So we look, I can tell you're our kind of people. We would enjoy being around you. Bronson said we would enjoy you, but we always at some point in the show we turn it over to Dudley and he asks you a couple of questions that he's kind of formulated so we get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah.
And we call it Rapid Fire, and it's brought to you by our friends at Springfield Armory.
Yeah.
And so without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dudley.
All right, here
All
we
right,
go.
Adam. So I'd like for you to answer these fairly quickly. It makes it more fun. And you can say neither or it depends, but I'd prefer you try to just come up, give us a...
Yeah, you're looking for the black and white answer, not the government answer. I understand.
Right, but yeah, you can say both. All right, so are you ready?
Best I'm going to be. Let's do it.
All right, original or crispy?
Crispy.
Mild or spicy?
Love spicy, but unfortunately been told to go more mild lately.
Oh, yeah, good old doctor. Sweet or unsweet?
Ooh, Both. Mixed bag.
All right, oatmeal or grits?
Oh, God. Cheesy grits all the way.
Cheese grits.
Nice.
All right.
He has assimilated into
So
the culture.
he is a Southerner.
Yeah, he is.
All right, quickly, cornbread or roll?
Oh, cornbread, of course.
All right, what interests you more, the ivory-billed woodpecker or the passenger pigeon?
Oh, man, although Leopold talked about the passenger pigeon.
There
It's
you
just kinda
go.
close to my heart.
All right, famous grouse, wild turkey, or gray goose?
Go turkey.
To Kill a Mockingbird, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, or Lonesome Dove?
Lonesome Dove, I'll get in trouble if I don't say that.
All right. Baltimore Orioles, St. Louis Cardinals, or Toronto Blue Jays?
Blue Jays.
Sunflower,
Fuck my house.
sunflower seed brands, David or Biggs?
Ooh, man, sunflowers, that's my addiction. Yeah, I'm kind of a Frito-Lay guy, but I'll go with Biggs, sure.
All right. Donald Duck, Roadrunner, or Daffy Duck?
Inside joke, I'll say Roadrunner.
Last but not least, Freebird, Blackbird, Fly Like an Eagle, or When Doves Cry?
Oh, wow. Freebird all the way.
Good job.
He's very Southern.
Yeah, he is Southern. You're not from New York.
Leonard Skinner.
Cheese grits,
Other
cornbread.
than he was slow in a lot of his answers, so that has
Yeah. Well, my father says I walk a lot slower than I used to, too. So
Yeah, it'll do
So that's
it
a
to you.
survival mechanism in the heat down here.
There's no question about that.
it works.
Good job, Dudley too. That was a
Wait,
good one.
no, I take that back. The Southerners are usually slow
slower,
talkers,
yeah.
where the Yankees are
So,
the fast
yeah,
talkers.
He's nailed it. He nailed it.
Yeah, he did a
100%.
great job.
Yeah, you did good.
So, Adam, before we let you go, Mac has a trivia question we're going to ask you. So, we've got the way we do this. If you get this question right, one of our listeners who's left us a review will win a prize.
Okay.
If you get this wrong, we give them your cell phone number.
All right, cool. I'm game.
All right, Adam. So you're playing for Grit Pack, who left us a good review.
Oh, grit pack.
So the prize is a GameKeeper cell helmet case for an iPhone.
Oh, yeah, look
Oh,
at that.
those are nice.
That's
Yeah,
one
they
right-
are. They're good.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
They are. Look at that.
So this is a true or false. A hummingbird's tongue is so long that it curls into its skull and around its eyes when it's not in use. True or false?
Let's say balls.
So a hummingbird's tongue.
Well, according to this little website that we saw,
Uh-huh.
now, and I'm gonna say you know more than what we know about this, but that's what it said. It was a did you know, and it said that the hummingbird's tongue wraps around. It's so long.
I know that's very true for woodpeckers, but I guess it could apply to hummingbirds also, but I'll stick with my initial and say false, and I think I obviously got it wrong. So.
Well, yes.
The reason I know that for woodpeckers, not to give you a story, but with mist netting, that's something when we catch them in those nets, we have to be very cognizant of their tongue. It has a lot of barbs on it, can get caught up in the net, and it can actually dislocate it, which is end of the game for the woodpecker. So I was trying to relate it to that, but yeah, apparently I lost. I'll have to buy a cell phone case. We can talk about it when you give me my number.
That's good.
Oh, you've been a good sport.
100%.
Yeah,
That's good
we-
Well,
stuff.
I appreciate it.
We've
It's always good to make a state employee sweat. It's good for us. It's good for our health.
So, is there anything that when you were dreading being on here that you thought, oh my goodness, these guys, if they know anything about birds, they'll ask me this question? Is there anything we should have asked we didn't?
No, man, you guys asked quite a bit in a short period of time, and no, I don't dread it. He just happened to reach out to me in the busiest time of my year. So, no, I love coming on podcast, and I actually do a lot with our local MPB program. So, this is what I do. I'm an extension, and I love communicating science, and I love interacting with everyday folks that are interested in it. So, I'll come back as many times as you want me to.
Well, that
Great.
sounds great.
That's
Thanks a lot.
Is there any like ways that people can follow you on social media or something that you want to give out?
Yeah, we're actually kind of developing some new websites with that. But if you just Google Jackson Metro Urban Wildlife Project, you'll get to go to our story map, which talks about our research here in Jackson that we just got launched here recently. Also, I just happen to have a really unique name. So if you Google Adam Rohnke, I am the first 21 things that show up. So,
Wow.
and that's my claim to fame. I didn't have to commit any crimes to do that. So, yeah, you can just Google me, find me that way. And then also another program I run is the Master Naturalist program with a colleague of mine. People are interested, particularly in Mississippi, learning more about wildlife. We have a cool adult education course that's going on right now, and that we offer multiple times a year. And if you're listening to another state, chances are your state has a very similar program with that, and I can put you in touch with the right folks.
And that Mississippi Museum of Natural Science, you said your wife worked there.
Yeah,
That is a fascinating place.
Yeah, great place.
If anybody's ever passing through, I highly recommend taking the time to go there. It's a really cool place.
It's a great museum, and she's been working hard with her colleagues at the Children's Museum. And I don't know if you've been there recently, but there's a huge new area for children out front. Both of the museums, you can see it from I-55. It's a $10 or $13 million investment into an outdoor play area, and a lot more coming. So I would get yelled at if I didn't make sure to put a plug in for that. You can't miss it.
There you go.
See it day and night from I-55 as you drive through Jackson.
That's great to hear.
Yeah,
Check
good
it
stuff.
out.
Yeah, and I think he is actually married to an angel.
Oh, nice.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. In more ways than one. So,
Well, look, we've enjoyed having you, Laney. We need to get him up here on a duck hunt. This
100%. Yeah.
and
man.
that'd be a lot of fun. We'll let you watch
Yeah.
us shoot some ducks.
Yeah.
yeah, I love it. And I'd love to bring my dog Rye with me too. So he's pretty good, even though he's not a full-on bloodline, but he's worked out pretty well as a rescue dog. So he works out good. He's a pretty chocolate lab.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome.
That's fun. Well, look, we're going to send you in the next couple of days. You'll get a companion shirt from a new line of clothes that's an old line that we've relaunched.
A new old line, yeah.
Yeah. So, look, we appreciate. We got some things to talk about, but we appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Doc.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
you.
guys for
Yes,
inviting
sir.
me.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
the invite. Hopefully see you in person next time. Take care.
Absolutely.
Let's do it. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Laney, I tell you, although we're not talking about hunting these birds.
No, it's just an immersion in nature. I mean, it goes back to why we love turkey hunting, why we love duck hunting. There's a romance with birds. I mean, Dudley, you've said the birds have a direct, connection to heaven. So I think just the things you see, especially as you get older as a hunter, you just enjoy those little nuances, including, those beautiful, colorful birds that come through. And it's not just songbirds. I mean, like Mississippi kites, there's birds of prey.
Yeah, I saw some kites the other day on a walk after work.
That come through there, and so just check it out and pay attention to it. Yeah.
We're interested in everything that there is to do outside. Why would you not want to learn as much as you can about birds?
I don't want to see a plant that I don't know what it is, and I don't want to hear a bird that I don't know what it is, and I don't want to see a bird, obviously, that I don't want it is. So, it's always fun.
We need to post a little video of your tanager.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, I need to get a video of him. For sure.
What's interesting is that's a summer tanager.
Yes.
And can you tell me what color the female is?
Yellow.
The male is red.
Yeah, the female was yellow, I thought.
That's right.
Yeah.
Red is.
Well, that's the one he's chasing all the time. Yeah, sure is.
Do you think he's seeing his reflection in the window?
I think it's an aggressive thing. I think he thinks it's another male. It's the only way I can describe it. So he spends a lot of time around the house. Ironically, when I pull up in my GameKeeper truck, he moves to it. He'll sit on the window and it's like he wants to come to work with us.
And he's persistent.
He is very persistent. My wife named him Dodo. I don't know.
Dodo.
Is Dodo still with us?
Yeah, Dodo's still with us. He left me some blueberries on my the rail of my bed this morning. Yeah, he was sitting there and then dropped one and then flew off. So
Okay,
he's still there.
You were telling me the other day that another tanager flew into your window.
Yeah.
You thought it was Dodo.
Yeah, but I don't think it was.
Okay. Well, I was going to say I learned a lesson. I had a bird fly into my window a couple months ago, and I remember seeing where Ricky Flint had gotten a bird that hit his window and put it in a shoebox.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times you think these birds are dead. Well, they're really not dead.
Just knocked
They're just
out.
in a state of shock. And so if you can put them like in an enclosed box, like a shoe box, and leave them there for 10 or 20 minutes to just sit there and breathe, oftentimes they'll recuperate. And then you can just take the top off the box and they'll
Let them flutter on off.
usually stand up and flutter off. And that happened with me, and it worked.
Wow.
Wow, I never heard of that.
Mine didn't come back.
Oh.
He was there for a good 20, 30, 40 minutes.
Well, remember, we had to put all those things on the front door to keep Bobby from walking through the glass because he kept bumping into it.
That's true. Yeah.
So
It was.
Yeah.
we just ordered some of those bird things off of Amazon and put them on the front door, and
There
it
you
worked.
go. So,
Yeah.
where's the LS tractor?
Last I saw it, Richie had it.
Okay.
And he was going to do some, I think he was putting in some water lines or something.
Okay. Well, I mean, we got some work to do around here,
Yeah.
Bring it on back.
And Richie's not in the room right now for us to interrogate.
That's
But
right.
so, yeah, we didn't really get to go over that. And there's one other thing I wanted to point out. So I didn't at the very beginning, but this episode is brought to you by, now listen to this now, guys, our friends at Heath Manufacturing that are making some bird houses and bird feeders, and they're GameKeeper branded.
Nice. See one on the counter over there.
That's right. That's a bird house, and they're going to offer 15% off right now in the code. If you go to heathmfg.com and type in
Manufacturing.
GK Bird, that's a code that'll get you 15% off.
Well,
Awesome
I've been
birdhouses.
wanting a couple of wren houses for our porches.
They're good
So
looking.
they'll quit
That's a
laying
good
a
looking-
nest
that's a
on
good
the
looking
top
birdhouse.
of the ceiling fan or something.
Yeah, so there you go. So Heath Manufacturing, our friends there, they make this. So it's kind of new. It's the first time we really talked about it, but guys can go there and get them a little discount. Might be something good to surprise your wife with.
Yeah. That's right.
Father's Day.
Looking
that'll
across-
be gone.
Looking across the room, Mac, what's going on with Biologic right now?
So we've got a lot of free shipping options. We've got free shipping on the endurance radish.
Yeah.
which it's doing really good. We've got some planted just
And just south of the office there.
just testing it a little bit more.
I tell you what, it is growing really, really fast. It really is. So,
And the drought tolerance. Of
Yeah,
it.
the drought.
I mean, this time of year. I mean, we have caught a few.
yeah, we've been
but
catching some rains. And the spring
not too
protein
much.
peas are looking unbelievable out there. It's not too late to plant spring protein peas.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I really enjoyed Adam.
Yeah, I do too. Did too.
The whole the idea of taking care of your wild birds intrigues me. It's just really neat. It's a lot of fun. So, well, if that's it, if we don't have anything else that we need to point out or cover, I'm looking around the room. I think why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley.
Get us out of here, Mac. That's some coyotes, man.
Song dogs.
Song dogs.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast. And be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Rohnke of Strickland.